see how this goes. Um, Alright, this is Parsha Noach, and unfortunately had a lot of issues last night. Windows decided that was going to do some updating and basically shut me down for hours. So I had a much clearer direction to go here that I'm not able to do. So I'm going to try and do my best, especially now in brevity of time. Okay? Bear with me. Okay. So, Noach, and the subtitle here is Chen, which is grace. And one of the elements that I want to be dealing here is, I dealt with this a little bit over Sukkot. I had the opportunity to teach there over at the farms there. I think it was just during the weekly reading. There was an element from Devarim where it talks about God, and this is an exchange with Moses, where Moses, that's after the sin of the golden calf, and Moses is relating the story about oh no, maybe it's Exodus. Yeah, that might be it. I think it was probably actually Exodus. Let me see. Let me see. Sorry. My mind is in 8 billion places now. It's going to take me a second to get it back on track. Not that I have really a second, but yeah, it is Exodus. Exodus around 34, where God puts Moses in the cleft of the rock. We'll probably go into that in a minute, but God gives a revelation of himself to Moses. Moses basically says, if you don't go with us, I'm not going to go. And it's one of the most mystical of texts in all of the Torah, and it contains an idea. And so one of the notions that I was submitting there, as again here, is, and I could illustrate, I don't have a lot of them here, but I could illustrate it from Jewish sources, that the idea of chen, right, mercy or grace, carries with it a lot of extra meaning other than mercy within the realm of Jewish mysticism. In other words, chen or grace, as we're more familiar with in English, grace, right, is carries with it a notion of someone or someones who have received a certain sense of the character of God. Those that have received grace have a certain understanding about God, okay? And in Jewish mysticism, there are various words and phrases used that basically deal with terms very similar that we find in the New Testament, including being children of faith, those that have found grace, and so on. And to that point, I believe even here embedded in Noach, we can see some elements from this. Okay. But before getting into that, so I'm going to come back to that in a second, I want to deal with an idea that's even it's interrelated with the idea that I'm about to get into. It goes back to this. It's in Genesis 3:9, we have this statement from God. It says, "And Yahweh Elohim called unto Adam and said, Where are you?" And this is after Adam's sin. So Adam sinned, and then God comes, right? And Adam and Eve are hiding. God says, "Where are you?" Does God not know where he is? I mean, in a sense, you could say, well, sin separated him from God, but does that mean that if you sin that God doesn't know of your existence anymore? Well, I mean, you can make some implications down there, but then you kind of deny his all-knowing nature. Well, there's a call in here, Adam, where are you? That's not towards Adam, or not from God's perspective, but in a sense from Adam's perspective. In a way, the question is kind of like this, I would say. Adam, where are you? Right? Adam, do you know where you are? And why that's relevant? Because Adam was created in the image of God. And bound up within this notion is that God is light, and man is to be a reflection of that light, right? And so the words of creation echo out continually through all of history, continually renewing creation. And Adam was created B'Tselem Elohim, right? After the image of God, or from God, was he made, and he was supposed to be a reflection of that light in the world. And so, when in the beginning, Genesis 1:3, Elohim said, "Let there be light," right? And what follows that? And there was light. So God said, "Let there be light," and there was a divine response from that statement, right? God said, "Let there be light," and instantly there was a response, and there was light. Why? Because it's our mission as being the image of God to imitate God. And when God said, "Let there be light," and there was light, what was there before light? There was darkness over the deep. And when God said, let there be light, there was light, and darkness was transformed into light. And so it's a part of our divine mission as being his creation to transform darkness into light. So when Adam was given commandment, "Of every tree of the garden you may eat, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you may not eat," and Adam ate, he stopped reflecting that light. And in a sense, there's a call that goes out repeatedly, and it's gone out since then till now. It's still going on. And the statement, let there be light. God continually says, let there be light, let there be light, let there be light, let there be light, let there be light. And we are called to be that divine response. Let there be light. And there was light. Right? As John writes in the beginning of the Gospel of John, and there was a light, and he was the light of all men. Right? God says, let there be light. And Adam sinned, and there was no immediate response because Adam was not reflecting the light. So God says, where are you? You're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, Adam. You're supposed to be light. You're supposed to transform the darkness into light. Why are you not light? You're an unlit candle, Adam. Where are you? So divine mission as the image of God to reflect God here in the world. So let there be light, and there was light. So we find here in Genesis 6:5-8, it says, Elohim saw the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of the heart was only evil continually. So we have man corrupted here on the earth, and God's call, let there be light. No response. Let there be light. No response. Let there be light. No response. Right? Well, except for Noah. But we're not at Noah yet, right? And it says, and it repented Yahweh that he made man on the earth, and it grieved him at his heart. And Yahweh said, I will destroy man whom I've created from the face of the earth, both man and beast and creeping thing and the fowls of the air. For it repents me that I have made them. But Noach found grace in the eyes of Yahweh. And go through this a little bit more here in a second. I want to back out of this. I'm going to pull up word search, Genesis 6:5-8. God saw the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart. His libo, his heart, his inner being. His inner being was even corrupted. Okay? He was not. Why? Because he was not being the divine image. His inner man was even corrupted. And then it says, and it repented Yahweh that he made man on the earth, and it grieved him at his heart. Right? Towards, or to, because it's L, which is, or libo, to his heart. To his very heart. What is the heart of God? The Torah or Mashiach. I mean, you have to get the core of it. It is the heart is in his bosom, who comes out from his bosom. The Mashiach, right? The word of God comes forth from him, grieves him right to his heart. Why? Because that is the image that is supposed to be reflected, but it's not being reflected, and it grieves him. Right? It says that let's see. This is the word translated as to repented. Okay. It's not that God had sinned and needed to repent in the way we understand it. It's saying that to sigh, that, and by implication to be sorry or to console, right? Even can be translated as comfort. So it's not like God's repenting here of evil, that he's doing tshuva, right? That's not the word. It's naharam, right? He's trying to console himself that he made man here on the earth because he's grieved that man isn't doing what he's supposed to be doing. Notice verse 5 says, and Elohim saw the wickedness of man. And then we understand the name Elohim stems from God's sense of justice. And so God's sense of justice saw wickedness, and wickedness needs punishment. Then it says, and it repented Yahweh. Now we switch over to Yahweh, the Tetragrammaton. Now we speak of God's mercy. So God's sense of justice saw the wickedness of man, but what responds is God's sense of mercy. It's hard to imagine the flood in this sense, but the flood, in a sense, is mercy. It's mercy. God is aggrieved at his creation. Why? Because it's not doing what it's supposed to do. Now you have to understand, kind of where I'm going with this, is the importance of Torah. The importance of Torah here in the earth is because it upholds the earth. The Midrash, I believe, states that God created through the world through the Torah, and man sustains the world through the Torah. If the Torah isn't, if God's instructions aren't pre-existent here, a lot of these stories doesn't truly add up very well. If it is present here, then a lot of this is going to make sense, and I'm going to get to it here in a second. So it says, and Yahweh said, I will destroy man who I've created from the face of earth. Again, Yahweh, not Elohim, Yahweh. In my mercy, I will destroy man I've created from the face of the earth, both man and beast, and creeping thing, and fowls of the air, for it repented. It grieves me. I need to console myself that I've made them. Why? Because I've made all of creation, and man's failure to reflect me in this creation is actually undoing my creation. I've talked about this a little bit before, about us being bound up with God by this state of reflection, that when we fail to reflect, there's a response. If we succeed at reflecting, that too carries a response. We call it blessing and cursing, right? This notion that this isn't just angry God saying, oh, I'm vengeful, I'm so mad you're being disobedient. It's God saying, when I made you and I designed you here on this earth, I am bound up with you. You are what reflects me here on this earth. If you're not reflecting me, this earth doesn't stay. It doesn't stand. In the beginning, the earth was created, and it was tohu vivohu. It was without form and void, and darkness covered the face, and all of it was covered in water. And God said, let there be light, and there was light. And God said, and there was a response. 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 And God made man, and man reflected God's image until the serpent. And then succeedingly after that, man becomes more and more and more and more corrupt. So what starts to happen? Okay, so you have Noah who found grace in God's sight. Now, that's going to be really important. But what happens is the earth was so corrupt before God, and the earth was filled with violence, that God looked upon the earth, and now we're back to Elohim. Behold, it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted his way upon the earth. Now you can read that as man's own way or God's own way. Bottom line, it's the same thing, because before the sin at the garden, man's way and God's way were the same. One and the same. Inseparable. Doesn't matter how you interpret this, it equals the same thing. So Elohim said unto Noah, the end of all flesh has come up before me. The earth was filled with violence, and through them, and behold, I will destroy them with the earth. Exodus 32:10. It's in the same area. So this is 6:13. Exodus 32. Man, I'm going to have to speed things along. Drop some things probably. God says here to Moses, right? It says, and Yahweh said to Moses, I've seen this people, and behold, as a stiff-necked people. Now therefore let me alone, that my wrath may wax hot against them, and I may consume them, and I will make thee a great nation. Okay. So the children of Israel, having received the Torah, again to be a restoration of that reflection of divine light here, failing to do so. And God says, basically, if you let me alone here, Moses, I'm going to destroy them. But that's okay, you'll be spared and I'll make a new nation. Why? Because I've done this before, Moses. I did it with a man called Noah. Do you remember that when I told you about that guy? Right. But here Moses stands in a way, and in doing so creates mercy, and it doesn't changes the course of things. Okay. But within here we have the same notion, the same things all tied up. That back here, what do we have? Right? The end of all flesh has come up before me. No, the fact that they're failing to uphold what they're supposed to do in the earth, it's unmaking the earth. Noah. It's sending it back. It's unmaking creation. It's taking it back to tohu vivohu. It's taking it back to be without form. Why is a flood coming? Because the earth was originally covered with water. It's being sent back. Creation was being unmade by them. And what stops it from being entirely unmade is Noah and then the other 7 souls. On account of Noah, Noah found grace in his sight. And on account of Noah, Noah stopped the earth from being entirely unmade. Because what would have happened after it was back covered with water? Then light would have receded, and then darkness, no form and void, and then the unmaking of it all. So it's on the account of the righteousness of Noah, because that's what it says. Scripture says, and Noah was a perfect man. Noah was a just, he was a Ziddiq, he was a righteous man, perfect in his generation, and Noah walked with God. And Noah was a prophet because he walked with God. And being a prophet who walked with God, it means he knew the ways of God. And it's on account of the righteousness of Noah. If only one family in all of the earth would reflect God's light, it's enough to spare it from entire destruction. But it's not enough to spare it from great hardship and great devastation. And so, in fact, when we talk about this, we talk about the earth being flooded and everything being undone, and everything died, but through the death, new life. And this is where immersion comes in. But you can talk about this as what we call the womb of the world. Just like a womb, it's filled with water, and inside there's life, right? The water comes forth, the child comes out, you have new life. And so this is why immersion or mikvah is associated with regeneration and new life. It's basically creation being, it's the old being done away with and the new coming back forth. It's the unmaking of that which is bad, the death of that which has gone astray, so that God could start again anew. Yeah, I'm going to have to cut a lot. I may go through some of this another time. To stay focused within this, then, here's where I'll go. Okay. Noah found grace in the eyes of God. This is the word for grace. Chen, right? There's chesed as well, but there's chen. And then we got Noach right here. Notice that, obviously this is what we call a final noon, so it looks a little different. But the first letter of Noah here is noon as well. So Noah is actually grace in reverse. Kind of a reflection of grace. A mirror image of grace. Okay? So what is grace? Grace is an expression, its core, it's mercy or favor, which is an expression of God's mercy, but it's also an expression of justice, right? Mercy is meaningless without justice. Without judgment, mercy is irrelevant. If there's no penalty for an action being mercy expressed towards you, that you don't receive something that you're due for, the action is meaningless. Do whatever you want. That's not mercy. You need something, you need an element of justice for mercy to mean anything. Okay? So in its core, chen is the balance of justice and mercy. But it's more than that. Okay? And so for Noah to find mercy in the eyes of God, maybe there's more to this statement than just on the surface. So, and one of the things it says here, it says Noah found mercy in the sight of God. I'm going to bounce in and out of here real quick. And 2 Chronicles 16:9 says, "For the eyes of Yahweh run to and fro through the whole earth to show himself strong in behalf of them whose heart is perfect towards him." Right? So the eyes of the Lord are constantly moving to and fro across the whole earth to find someone who he can show himself strong, whose heart is perfect towards him. In other words, God's eyes are looking for whoever is going to be a bearer of this image. And in doing so, he found Noach, right? And so, according to Chronicles, the idea that the eyes of the Lord are moving across the full face of the earth to find someone for God to show himself strong in, right, whose heart is perfect towards him, is someone that is willing to bear the image of God, be a reflection of his character, to be God's agency here on the earth. That's the core of what the idealization behind the idea of Mashiach. The core of Mashiach is the idea of God's image being reflected here on the earth, God's ways. It's the embodiment of Mashiach, right? And in fact, we know that Noah walked with God. This expression is an expression that Noah was a prophet. If that was Noah was a prophet, it means that the spirit of Mashiach was active in him, and in fact we know this because he's doing a mission of Mashiach. Mashiach's working through Noah to be a savior for all of humanity. The issue is we look at all these things independently and we see these people and their actions and we think, these are just great people. They are, okay? They are. We all know it's not easy to do right. We all know it's not easy to do good. But these are people through which Mashiach in you, the hope of glory. Mashiach active in Noach, right? And in fact, the grace of Noach is Mashiach, okay? Chen is another name for Mashiach. It's one of the names of Mashiach. Chen, mercy. And one of the reasons for that, I'm going to show you here. And this will be the last time. I'm just going to throw a lot of stuff on the cutting room floor here for brevity of time. Moses says here, Moses said unto Yahweh, see, thou sayest unto me, bring up this people, and thou hast not let me know whom thou wilt send with me. Yet thou hast said, I know thee by name, and thou hast also found grace in my sight. Chen, same word, okay? So Moses is saying, Yahweh, you said I found Chen, but I don't know who you're going to send with me. Who is this? Who is Hen? I found Hen. Who is Hen? Who is it? I don't know. Who are you going to send with me? Right? Because Moses has understood a flaw here. He says, okay, I go away. The people look for something else. They make another Moses, this time a cattle, and they corrupt themselves. They start going their own way. So what happens if I'm gone again? They're going to think that you're not with them anymore if I'm not with them, and they'll need something. They're missing something. So I need you to come. I need you to be here with me in a tangible way so that this doesn't happen again. So I'm not going anywhere unless you're here in a tangible way so the people don't confuse me with. So they understand that even if I'm not with them anymore, you're still with them. Okay? So who is Hen? He says, now I therefore pray thee, if I found Hen in thy sight, show me now the way. The way of the earth was corrupt. Okay? Show me the way. These people are corrupt. Show me the way, that I may know thee. So the way is to know God, and that I may find grace, Chen, in thy sight, and consider that this nation is thy people. And he said, my presence shall go with thee, and I will give thee rest. Okay? The root of that? Noach. Noach's name means to rest. You see? Noah's name means rest. Rest is the mirror image of mercy. Chen. God is saying, my presence will go with me and I will give you rest. I'm showing you the way. Chen. Who is Hen? Right? My presence shall go with me, or go with thee. And he said unto them, if thy presence go not with me, carry us not. I'm not doing this anymore if you're not here in a way people understand. Because Moshe had Mashiach in you, the hope of glory. Moshe had the spirit of Messiah at work with him. Moshe was being like a Noach. The people didn't perceive that they could be like Noach, that they could be like Moshe. They needed somebody else to do it. Okay? So it says, wherein shall it be known here, and I thy people have found grace, Chen, in thy sight, is it not that thou goest with us? So we shall be separated, I and thy people, from all thy people that are upon the face of the earth. And Yahweh said unto Moses, I will do this thing also that thou hast spoken, for thou hast found chen in my sight, and I know thee by name. And he said, I beseech thee, show me thy glory. And he said, I will make all my goodness pass before thee, and I will proclaim Yahweh before thee, and I will be gracious to whom I will be gracious, and show mercy upon whom I will show mercy. Very interesting here that Moshe is having a conversation, Moses is having a conversation with the Lord, or with Yahweh, and Yahweh is speaking at this time. I, that's Yahweh, I is Yahweh, right? Any, it's Yahweh, will proclaim the name Yahweh. That's weird. It's a little weird. It's almost speaking in the third person now. So is the I Yahweh? Well, yes and no, because we know he's speaking to Yahweh, but yet there is something else going on here. This is the answer to who Chen is. And he said, thou cannot see my face, for there shall no man see me and live. I, Yahweh, at my core, is the invisible God, outside time and space, invisible. And if you're alive, you're encased in time and space in the material world. You can't perceive that. You're finite, limited. But I can show you something. I can show you something of me, but it isn't me, because you can't truly see me if you're alive, because you can't see the infinite. You have to be outside of time and space. You have to be outside the material world to perceive the infinite. You cannot be alive and see me. It's not possible. Okay? But here's what I'll do. And Yahweh said, behold, there's a place by me, thou shalt stand upon the rock. Right? A firm foundation. And it shall come to pass when my glory passes by. So he's not saying when I pass by. My glory is going to pass by. Glory is kavod. It's like the unknowable things of God. Something miraculous is going to be happening. It's the deepness of God is going to pass by you. And I'll put thee in a cleft in a rock, and I'll cover thee with my hand while I pass by. And I'll take my hand away, and thou shalt see my back parts, right? The implication is you will see a portion of me, but not my face. It cannot be seen. My very essence, you cannot truly see if you're alive. And Yahweh said unto Moses, now take 2 more tablets of stone, right? Because this Torah thing is tied with the way that you asked me about, and it's tied up with my glory, and it's tied up with all these things, and on account of what you're saying, I'm going to spare these people. We don't want to unmake the earth again like in the days of Noach, because if you do this, you'll find Noach, right? You'll find rest. Be ready in the morning, come up in the morning unto Mount Sinai, present thyself to me on the top of the mount. No man shall come up neither, right? And so Moses did what he said, and then what happens? Yahweh descended in the cloud. Yahweh's infinite. The infinite is not truly here in the cloud, but yet in a way it is. It's kind of the great paradox, right? Something of Yahweh descended in the cloud. And here within Judaism, the mystical side of it understands that there is an issue here. That something of Yahweh descended in here. And in this they call it the lesser Yahweh. Why? Because if Yahweh descends in the cloud, that means he has to be limited in some fashion. Because now he's in a cloud, which is a place. He's inside, he descended, so now he's in time. Once you have time and space, you have infinite confined. This is why in Philippians, Paul talks about, in regards to Yeshua, him emptying himself. He's divesting himself of something to be able to come in here with us. This is the answer to who Chen is. This is the essence of the Mashiach, is Yahweh expressing himself here, self-limitation, right? This is the Mashiach. And he's showing something outside to something that was already at work inside of Moses. Moses was already expressing the visible image, they were now giving a visible image to saying, just like when Yeshua came down, this is what you are working towards. This is your goal. And we know that this gets stranger because it says, and Yahweh passed before him and proclaimed, Yahweh Elohim, merciful and gracious, long-suffering and abundance. You know, very weird that now Yahweh's coming and proclaiming his own name here. Just in many other places in the scriptures, they say that if you look through this whole passage, the word grace or chen is used over and over and over. This is why it's the name of Mashiach, because we have Mashiach manifesting himself in the way, not as the man Yeshua, but the spirit that embodied Yeshua, the word, the Torah, manifesting here to Moses. Okay? So when we talk about the divinity of Mashiach, it's here within the Torah. It makes many uncomfortable for sure. But when we understand that it's not so convoluted, but it's just expression. On the hand, you could say that Mashiach is Yahweh, but Yahweh is not Mashiach. Yahweh is more than that. He's at his core everything that is unseen, but yet he can manifest here. And so the ultimate thrust to my point here is that Noach was an embodiment of Mashiach as a deliverer, that's the grace that he found, Mashiach. I'll probably just end up, because I'm going to end this here on this thought. You know, I talk a little bit about this and some stuff I do about Abraham too, and the idea that Abraham knew the Mashiach. Now we're not talking about, a lot of times we kind of switch language around. That's fine. It's, you know, someone could say that's not technically accurate, but the patriarchs knew the Mashiach. They knew of the Mashiach. They knew the Mashiach. Do they know Yeshua? To say it that way is a little different, you know, because Yeshua is a man that was born from the Virgin. But the end result is the same. It's the same, right? And so we have Mashiach here from Adam down through Noach, down through Shem, down through Abraham, down through. And ultimately, like I said, I'm going to conclude. The main thrust here is that I'm trying to make is Mashiach is central to Judaism. Central, inseparable. There are those within Judaism that fool themselves into thinking that Mashiach, at its core, you could have Judaism without Mashiach. No, you can't. No, you can't. From the very Torah, from the very text of the Torah. They say, well, you're reading into things. Yeah, that's what we do, right? It's what Jews do. We read the text, we interpret the text, we apply it. And so, yeah, that's the ultimate thrust is, I had a lot more avenues to go, but I don't want to push things anymore. That's already pretty long.